I'm recording it so everybody will get a copy if they want one. So, good morning, everyone. I've introduced myself already, but Sam's here. Sam hasn't introduced himself yet. Sam, do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
As a business capacity or? Okay, guys, I'm Sam Sharma, and I've known Tracy for about 5 years, and I work with her as well. And we share a few common clients as well. As always, we all go through ups and downs of our relationships, and hence I'm here to learn more about managing that well. Thank you.
Thank you. So at last, here we are at the introduction of my wonderful guest, Oliver Marcelle. Oliver, it's your turn to introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone from all around the world. Most of you are probably on one side of the world and I'm on the other. I am in the United States. I'm on the East Coast of the United States in the state of Maryland, which is about 45 miles north of Washington, D.C., just to give context for those who may know where Washington, D.C. is. I am a guy, and I know that sounds very generic, but stay with me for a second. I am an inner city kid born to Caribbean parents who has gone through the various ups and downs of life, have made a ton of mistakes, have gone through a myriad of disappointments, have had some successes, and all of those things have been woven together without me even knowing. Sometimes we don't even know that these things are actually being woven together to land you in the spot that is your destiny, that is your purpose, that is your passion, that is your path. That purpose and passion and path for me is in seeing relationships thrive and seeing men win in every area of their lives. And as such, I am an author, speaker, and coach in the men's empowerment and relationship building spaces, giving people the tools to build the relationship of their dreams. And so that is what I do. I am the husband of one wife, and that, that's all I can handle. So that's what I have. I have 3 adult children, the youngest of which is 19, and a 2-year-old grandson. And I'm looking forward to this conversation because, listen, it's, even though we're going to be talking about this is not necessarily, at least from my perspective, it's not about hearing from an expert as much as it is talking about some things that will not only enrich those that may hear this, but that will enrich me as well. And so I'm thankful to be here. Thank you, Tracy, for this opportunity.
Great. What a lovely introduction. I want to start off with this question today, and I want you to all think about what the answer comes to you as a person, what it is where did you initially start having expectations towards other people, and how was that transformed in your own life? When you think of yourself today as an adult, maybe in a relationship or at work, how has that affected the expectations that you have in your relationship now? And I'd like to put that to Oliver. What do you think for yourself, Oliver? And in your experience, you can maybe tell us a bit about how you experience how this, has a link between a lot of the problems or issues that might arise in relationships.
Yeah, so I'd say to answer the first part of that question, where did it start in terms of expectations? What's my point of reference as it relates to expectations? And I would take that all the way back to childhood. And I think about times where my parents would say, okay, tomorrow we're doing XYZ, or there would be something that's happening in school. We're going on this trip. And if you think about expectations, right, expectations are a strong belief that something is going to happen, or that it will be the case in the future. And so thinking about those things and expecting those things to happen based on either what was told to me or what was shown to me, or what I thought the role of my parents were, right? So you think If you think about your parents, the role of your parents is to take care of you, is to feed you, is to make sure everything's okay. So there's just certain things that you expect. So when my dad dropped me off at school in the morning, I just expected that he would come back and get me because that's what he's supposed to do, right? And so if you fast forward now into your adult life, often, and I'm not going to say this is across the board, but often many of our expectations are shaped by the designation of the roles of those various people or entities in whatever that particular scenario is, right? So you go into a job, there's certain things you expect because you know the role of a manager is A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And so you expect certain things based on that. And I think we kind of go into relationships like that sometimes. And the thing that we notice here often, and I can speak for what I see in the States more than anywhere else, is that there's such a heavy there's such heaviness placed on roles. And so we grew up, my generation grew up being told that a man does these certain particular tasks and is responsible for these certain particular things, and a woman is responsible for these certain particular things. And then as I got older, that kind of morphed as the generations came and went. That kind of morphed into some different things, and so now we're in a space now where that role, if you will, for somebody like my 19-year-old, that role is not that heavily, there's not that heaviness placed on roles now. And so their expectations are a little bit different than what maybe my father's expectations were based on what my expectations are. So what I'm seeing in relationships now is really dependent on the age and the generation that you find yourself in, where people go into relationships expecting a certain thing from their mate based on the role that in their mind that mate should fulfill.
That's so true. Thanks for that, Oliver. I find that what I notice in their mate as well, like you say, the role, but for me, it's sometimes the distorted expectation of yourself in that role in the relationship, and how you can put this huge expectation of yourself in the relationship to be a certain way, be able to do certain things, provide certain things, and fix certain things, specifically when it comes to parenting, and when your partner is maybe suffering or going through something difficult. Those expectations are can actually be quite draining and I can't find the word now, but it debilitating for you as a partner in a relationship. So where does that expectation come from? Once again, it comes from your childhood, as what was expected from you as a child, from your parents, from your teachers, from your siblings, from your friends. What type of relationships you are used to having in your past. What type of parents were you? Were your parents happily married? Were they demanding? Maybe you had a narcissistic parent, maybe you had a narcissistic friend. And how you as a child learned to cope with those types of relationships are somehow embedded in your brain as your strategy that works to avoid conflict, because that's what we all want, to avoid conflict. And this is how we then start engaging in these behaviors that are very unhealthy and can affect our relationships as adults and as parents with our children, or same as in business. If you think about the expectations in relationships, I'd like to ask you guys to think of this question. When you think of yourself as somebody in a relationship, that you have the physical, the mental, but also the sensual side of yourself when it comes to a couple's relationship, or the sexual, sensual, whichever you want to, I like to call it sensual, part of your relationship. What are the expectations you have of your partner in those relationships? in your relationship, and what is the expectation of yourself in all three of those areas on your relationship? Oliver, what do you have to say about that?
So for me, it's changed over the years. And it's changed based on what we were just talking about. Going into my marriage, I went into it with a very different set of expectations. And those expectations were very much fueled by what I believed was supposed to take place. So I believed that she was supposed to be a certain way. I believed that she was supposed to treat me a certain way. And it was a lot of those expectations were really focused on what I would get out of this scenario, how I would benefit from it. And so I approached that very differently for all of those three things that you just mentioned. I was looking at that in terms of expectations around what I would get and how I would benefit and what the treatment was that was supposed to come in my direction over the course of my life. I've been married 22 years, so we've gone through many stages and phases of growth in that amount of time. That has shifted now, and it has actually become, what do I expect of myself in all of these scenarios? It's really shifted. My wife and I did an exercise several years ago, which we incorporate in our coaching. And we had to do this exercise around the identification of our most important emotional needs and really digging into what those needs are, why those needs are important, how those needs benefit the overall marital team, and what can we do as mates to facilitate the meeting of those needs. And after digging through that exercise, which was very comprehensive in how we had to go through this identification process, we had to make a commitment that we were now going to make our focus those things for each other. And that was a game changer for me, because up until that point, all of the expectations that I've had around relationships have all been self-centered expectations. What is this person supposed to do for me? How is this person supposed to treat me? How much sex is she supposed to give me? All of these kinds of things. It was me. And that focus switched. And then my expectations changed drastically, because now it was about, okay, what kind of man do I want to show up as? How affectionate should I be? How much attention should I be paying to her as it relates to the sensual side of things, as it relates to the communication, as it relates to the meeting of needs, and paying attention and learning her and being able to understand her as a person. And so my expectations have changed over the years, and they're more expectations of myself than they are of her in all of those three areas.
Very true, very true. If you guys would like to write in the comments how you have found yourself evolve from, let's say, when you first started experiencing relationships as a youngster up to now, what was the evolvement and how you've changed within your relationships? I'd love to hear your comments there.
And while go ahead. Sorry,
carry on, Oliver.
I was going to say, while you guys are putting that in the comments, it's interesting that from an expectation standpoint, right? We typically in relationships, we kind of hang the success of the relationship, or the happiness, if you want to use that word, in the relationship, the fulfillment in the relationship, we hang that on whether our expectations are met or not.
That's so true, Oliver.
It's tricky.
So true.
It's tricky. I mean, I know we'll get into it, but
tricky.
I just wanted to throw that out there. That's a tricky thing to do, but that's kind of what we've been taught. We've kind of been taught that that's the benchmarks of a successful relationship are tied up in the fulfillment of your expectations, and that's not always the case.
Let's think, add on to that and ask this question. When it comes to expectations in your relationship with your partner, when you are measuring your fulfillment of your own expectations, do you look to your partner's happiness and measure it by their happiness? Or do you measure it by your own happiness? So I'll repeat that. When you measure your own expectations in your relationship, do you measure it by looking at your partner's happiness? Or do you measure it by looking at your own happiness? You can write your comments in your answer to that. So for me, I used to do a lot of measuring it by my partner's happiness. And then I realized that as I matured, that it's not about only that. It's also about how you communicate, like Oliver said, to your partner, what it is that you actually need from them. And a very good exercise to do is to sit with your partner. I do this with my clients, have some form of touch. You can either hold hands or just put your hand on your partner's knee and him on your knee. And you can start talking about yourself. You're not allowed to say anything about, you're not allowed to use the word you. You're not allowed to use I need from you or this and this. You have to always talk about yourself. And for 10 minutes, you have to talk about how you're feeling in the relationship, what you need in the relationship, how you are feeling you are performing in the relationship, and how you are hoping the relationship is going to evolve in the future without using you. And even by having this conversation with your partner, we don't ever have this conversation with ourselves where we sit still and we ask ourselves, how am I doing? How am I feeling in the expectation game? Am I meeting my own expectations? Am I feeling like a failure? Am I feeling like I need to, am I measuring it by my own happiness or my partner's happiness? And then your partner gets a turn to say it back. 10 minutes of discussing how they feel, what's going on in their life, what are their expectations of themselves. And it makes it very clear vision and picture of your partner when you allow them to do that, because it is vulnerable. Yes, it is, to do this exercise, but it gives your partner a clear vision of the mirror that they're looking at. Because the other side of it is that when we look at our partner, we are subconsciously measuring our own success and meeting our own expectations by looking at them in the mirror. But we're actually looking at ourselves because we think, oh, my partner's unhappy, so I'm not doing a good job. My partner looks off with me, so I must be doing something wrong. But when you allow your partner to speak and say, then you can also address those needs. Say to them, well, I think that's an unrealistic expectation of yourself. You can be kind and empathize with your partner and point out to your partner, but I don't expect that from you. Or I've never expected you to do this and this, or, or let's juggle it. I'll do this, you do that, and lift the load a bit from your partner so that the assumption of expectation can be clarified and that you don't have to assume the expectation is being expected by your partner and vice versa. Oliver, do you have anything to say?
I agree with that. I've been reading through the comments, which are fantastic. Just reading through some of the comments, and Sam actually said something that I literally was about to say, which is the beautiful realization in relationships is when you get to the place where you actually realize that it's more about who you are and what you have committed to contribute than who the other person is and what you will benefit from as it relates to being with them. Because this whole expectation thing often sets us up. And there's a and I think, Tracy, we talked about this. There's a saying that has been kind of popping up lately a lot, which is that expectations are merely premeditated resentments. And we're seeing that in a lot of relationships because people are so hung up on the expectations of a relationship that when those things don't happen, that is license for them to tear the whole relationship down. But they haven't done any work around what are the things, when you talked about just you focusing on yourself, what are the things that I should be doing to be the best version of myself? Not about expectations, but just so that I show up in a way that is conducive to a successful relationship. The pivotal point for me in my life was 18 months into my marriage. Remember, I said I got into it for the wrong reasons. I got into it with a ton of expectations, not even thinking about what I'm bringing to the table, just based on the role, based on what I felt like a wife should be, and all of these other expectations and ideologies. I got into it with that. The turning point was 18 months of my marriage where I had this pivotal moment at 4 a.m. And I won't get into the whole thing, but the crux of that is I had to look in the mirror and be like, wait a minute, what kind of man do you want to be? Forget about all these expectations. Forget about what the roles are. Forget about, what the societal norms are, the social constructs are as it relates to relationships. What kind of man do I want to be? How do I want to show up? How do I want to treat this person that's in my life? And I talk about in my book, I say that you shouldn't demand something you haven't first developed. I can't expect something from her and I'm not doing that work in myself. So how do I want to show up to the table? And for me, that was pivotal because it started to not be about expectations. It started to be about character development and taking the time to learn the person that I signed up to be with for the rest of my life. And in learning her and learning to love what I was discovering, wasn't about expectations anymore. It was just about enjoying the journey with this person and the self-discovery and the newness and the spontaneity and all of these other things that I hadn't factored in because I had these list of expectations. And so for me, it's definitely been about, yes, I am very much concerned with her happiness, but not because it will be a fulfillment benchmark, but because it actually is a benchmark for me in terms of how well I'm doing showing up the way that I have committed to show up.
Wonderful. I love that, Oliver. And I love all the comments. I've just quickly read through them. Thank you for those that have put such lovely comments in there.
Comments are phenomenal.
Yes. What do you think would be the huge shift in a lot of relationships, guys? I'm putting it out there again, another question. If everybody was instead of thinking about the expectations of surrounding their relationships, if they actually decided that they were going to have a good enough relationship, and in saying good enough, I don't mean saying that that is a mediocre relationship, is accepting that their relationship is good enough for them. They are good enough for the relationship. Their partner is good enough for them. It's almost like an acceptance of the somebody here, I can't remember who it was, said in the comments about accepting your partner for all the parts of them, which that means in a lot of senses that as well, about accepting the person, accepting yourself, but at the same time realizing that you can't compare your relationship to other people and say that, oh, so and so's relationship looks fantastic, because believe you me, guys, most of the clients that I have that come and see me, and I think you'll agree with me, Oliver, their friends all think they're very happy, but it's when they inside behind closed doors that the problems are there. So do you think accepting that your relationship is good enough is the answer? What do you think?
Well, it's interesting with the clients that we have. Many of the challenges that they face are really tied up in the fact that their expectations are not things that are actually beneficial to the success of the relationship. Their expectations are actually things that are beneficial to their happiness, which are very two different things, right? I think it was Claire that said something about in the comments, not having a lot of expectations on herself. And I'm paraphrasing, I have to go back and look at it. But when she got into the relationship, right. And having to switch to what's going to make me feel safe and those kinds of things. Right. And I think what we don't spend a lot of time on is understanding that the relationship is a journey, and that everything that happens in a journey, if you think about it now, if you were to get in your car and like, I'm going to drive 13 hours from my home, you may get into that car and your main expectation is, I want to get to my destination. But you can't have expectations like, I expect it not to rain. I expect my tires to do. You can't have unrealistic things that you can't control. And I think often we get into relationships with these expectations of, okay, this person is going to make me happy because XYZ. And we can't really see into the future that way. Somebody told me this, and somebody told my wife and I this a long time ago, and it stuck with me for my entire life. So we often walk down the aisle and get married and look at marriage as the equivalent of reaching the pinnacle of Mount Everest. Mount Everest is a super high mountain, right? Said, actually, when you get married, you're actually merely just arriving at base camp. So I don't know if any are mountain climbers here, but if you think about arriving at base camp and all of the stuff that has to take place in that preparation phase at base camp before you even step foot on the mountain, and that being the journey and the trajectory of your relationship, that changes your view on how you go about this, right? And so you start to look for things that are conducive to the success of the relationship: a safe environment, great communication, intimacy building, the expectations. And I don't even want to call them that, but the things that you're looking at and the things that are important to you change, as opposed to how is this person going to cook for me? Or is this person going to dress a certain way for the rest of their life? Or are they going to be this weight? Or are they going to be, all of these little things that we feel like are conducive to the success of our relationship get thrown out the window, because then we start looking at character. Is this person going to be a safe space for me? Is this person going to be a haven of rest for me? Am I going to be able to provide for this person a safe place and a haven of rest? And so those things kind of change hopefully those things change. And the couples that we come with that come to us, we spend a lot of time redirecting their perspective, because up until this point, they've approached their relationship a certain way because their perspective has been tied up in all of these expectations. And when they're unmet, there's a ton of disappointment. That disappointment turns into resentment. So we do a lot of work on, and when they come to us, they're not thinking about their perspective. They're thinking about, oh, this is not happening. This is not happening. This was supposed to happen. This was supposed to happen. My approach is not working. And so they're feverishly trying to get us to help them change their approach. But your approach is typically is a reflection of your perspective. So before we start working on your approach, because you don't like the results of your approach, let's go back and look at how your ideology around this thing. What are your expectations? What did you come into this thing looking to do or looking to have? And let's evaluate that first. And then we can move through the trajectory of your approach. So that's what we've been finding with the couples that we work with.
Thank you, Oliver. Sam just said here, this reminds me of the statement, greater the expectations, greater the disappointments. which is so true. I love that quote. It's one of my favorite quotes. And it's so true. I'd like to just touch on the subject. I don't know how relevant it is for everyone here, but there might be someone out there that might need to hear this. What about when a relationship goes horribly wrong and you end up breaking up with that person and you start a new relationship? I find in a lot of the clients that I work with that they have higher expectations and that are very closely linked to the previous relationship that was maybe a toxic relationship, or let's just call it went horribly wrong. I find it's a journey that the clients have to go through to accept that a lot of the things that they are expecting in this new relationship might look and sound similar to their past relationship, and which might be negative, might be positive. But I'd like to hear your take on, what do you think, Oliver, if someone is in a new relationship and they have a history of a past relationship that wasn't so great, that I often feel very sorry for the partners of those people, because they are under a lot of pressure to fulfill these expectations of their partner that doesn't want them to do this, doesn't want them to do that, because of the triggers that they are then having or experiencing in this type of relationship. So how would you say, let's give somebody out there a tip on how you can approach your relationship if you have so many triggers, if you have so many issues from your past relationship? I'd be interested to hear your point.
That's a great question. And you know, I'm a proponent of therapy, right? So there's and when I say therapy, I'm talking about clinical therapy. So I'm a coach in the space, you're a therapist in the space, right? I believe that connection goes hand in hand, because what therapy does is allow for the deconstruction of a thing or a concept, being able to point back to where that came from, clean that all up, excavate it out, if you will, for a coach to come in and be able to help craft some strategy and blueprint for rebuilding. I'm working with someone right now who is going through a divorce. And that is a major, what you just described is a major concern for her. The triggers, because her point of reference, which is normal, your point of reference is going to be what you just came out of. And it tends to be the lens that you look through for whatever else may come, right? And so what she's doing in terms of work right now is she's doing some very significant work on building herself up. I go back to that what Claire said earlier stands out to me again. Really looking at now what are the things that she expects from herself. Now, you do have to do some significant work around triggers and around the management of those, and the ability to now build yourself up in a way that allows you to recognize red flags and to be able to head those things off. You do need to do that work with somebody. And part of that work has to be, and somebody just put it in there, healing relationships with self. Part of that has to be now taking some time, which sometimes we don't do. I don't know where in the part of the world where you guys are, I don't know if you see this, but in the States, we see this quite often, where people get out of relationships, toxic relationships, and to meet the need of companionship, jump into something right away. And they're not ready for that. So they jump into that with the same ideologies, with the point of reference of the last thing, looking through the lens, and now they manufacture challenges in the new one because they haven't taken time to really understand, okay, what, if anything, was my role in this? What did I contribute? What did I not contribute? What is it that's important to me around safety, around making sure that I'm in the right environment, making sure that there's certain emotional needs that are being paid attention to, and that I'm developing those characteristics that I want to find in this next thing, so that you're able to go into that with your eyes wide open, kind of thing, right? So, Sam said, what's my part in the failure? Key question to ask, without a doubt. Without a doubt. And a lot of people don't want to face that question because it's very easy. Couples come to us and it's very easy for them to say, well, he should have and she should have. Like, wait a minute, I get that. And that's fine. But if that person were to be eliminated from the scenario, you're still left with you. And what is it that you need to be the best you? And what were you not doing? Or what could you have done? Or what could you have paid attention to more that would allow you to get to that space? Because no matter whether you get into another relationship or not, all of those things are going to have to be worked on in order for you to be just a great person.
Lovely. I love that. This opens up to probably the last question that we're able to, or statement that we're able to discuss, because we running out of time at the moment. But let's look at the other side of the relationship, the partner of a scenario like this, that is in a new relationship and wants it to work. I'd like you guys to contemplate and think about how it is for such a partner to be involved in a relationship with someone that is so easily triggered and has come from an abusive relationship, where the comparison to them, to their partner, is that I can't do anything, or they were walking on eggshells type of thing. I can't do anything because my partner gets triggered. So for me, I find this often comes forward. It might not specifically be a previous romantic relationship. It might be because the partner does something that might remind them of their mother, their father, somebody in their past that might have affected them in a certain way. And if that happens, that it triggers them, and they get from 0 to 100 in literally 3 seconds, if you can imagine how that looks like. So I always say that this is, once again, where communication in the relationship is so essential, so that your partner can really understand what it is that makes you react the way you do, and almost have an empathetic approach to understanding why certain things make you react, and that it might not exactly be about them, but it's about something else. And that goes very hand in hand with explaining to your partner very carefully, using the technique of talking about yourself, not about the partner, is what you need to receive to feel soothed in a situation like that. What do you as a person need in a situation where you feel flooded emotionally and triggered? What does the partner need to do? Because as we all know, there's various things that we do. We can shut down, stonewall, we can try and defend ourselves, we can become critical of our partner. But sometimes it's very good to just have a pause and to say, hang on, it's not about me in this moment. Why is my partner feeling so reactive? What can I own in it? Like Sam said here, what's my part? And I said this morning in a meeting, it's very much like, and this is very similar. It's about seeing your partner as an instrument that you're playing to get a beautiful tune. And if your partner is sounding a bit false, imagine playing a violin, and you're trying to live this beautiful relationship, playing this beautiful Mozart piece with your partner, but sometimes it sounds squeaky and your partner isn't giving you the reaction you want. maybe you're not playing it right, or maybe the partner's not tuned correctly. It's about taking that pause in those situations and not being so reactive back and defensive and critical, saying you're always so sensitive, or why are you so snappy, or something like that, and try and understand what it is that's causing this reaction, so that your partner can feel loved, heard, understood, and accepted. Because I find in a lot of relationships, when someone has had some type of trauma, that comes up every now and then in their relationships, that it also evokes a lot of guilt and shame in them within the relationship. And that's hand in hand linked to resentment, but not of their partner, of themselves. And that's very unhealthy as well. So, I think it's important to see it from both sides. Do you have anything to say to add to that, Oliver?
I agree with that. The communication piece. I've lived a piece of this, right? Because my wife, we've been married 22 years. I've known her for 27. When I met her, she was, I won't say fresh, but very recently out of a volatile situation. So there were certain things, and I wasn't aware of this, but there are certain things you can hear my voice. It's deep. It's kind of resounding. If the volume elevates a little bit, that was a trigger, but I didn't understand that in the beginning. So certain tones, certain words, certain gestures, just kind of would take her to a different place. And so a lot of what had to take place for us is that I had to learn how to communicate to her in the way that she desired to be communicated to. So there was some learning that had to take place. And so I had to step back, because I have a very different communication style than she does. And so that was a clash in and of itself, because I'm approaching it the way I would normally approach anything with communication, with this kind of shotgun kind of style. But that's not what was conducive to productive conversation for her. So I had to take some time to really learn that. So the communication piece is really vital. And then again, going back to working on myself, as opposed to expecting something from her, being able to now say, okay, what do I need to do to ensure that she knows without a shadow of a doubt that this is a safe environment, that I'm not that guy, that this is a place where you can come and talk and it's going to be safe. And no matter what else is happening out there, you can count on me and I will listen, as opposed to give you advice and say, well, you should be doing this and you should stop doing this and you shouldn't do that. No. I'm going to hear what you say. Give me your perspective. Share with me what's going on. What are you thinking? Just unload it. And you have the safe place to do that. And then consistently showing up that way. Because it's one thing to say you're going to do that. But the building bricks of trust are consistent behavior. So consistently showing up that way was the thing that allowed her to now begin to rest in the fact that, okay, this guy has my best interests at heart. He is protecting me. He is listening to me. And so that's important. And that goes back to now really making the distinction between the self-work and the expectation of your mate. Because sometimes it's not about what you expect in your mate as much as it is about the self-work that needs to take place so that you show up for your mate in a way that allows all of the things that you may want to get out of this relationship to actually happen organically without you saying, well, you should be doing this and you should be doing that. Now, the flip side of that is you should talk about it, because most of the couples that come to us, the resentment is it's crazy. I don't know if you're going to be surprised by this, but I could point to a large percentage of couples that they would come to me with all of this laundry list of stuff that's not happening. My first response to them is a question. Have you talked about it? Well, no, she should already know. Oh, no, she should not already know. Like, all of us don't have psychic powers. Like, we can't do that. So you're going to have to talk. You're going to have some conversations about, hey, babe, you know what? These are the things that make me feel safe. These are the things that that help, that make me feel sensual and make me feel sexy. These are the things that, that we need to avoid so that we don't run into conflict. All of these kinds of things are conversations that need to take place. And so we take couples through the components of successful and productive conversations so that they can have these conversations and then craft strategy to create those spaces.
Thank you so much, Oliver. I think, it's really been a very, very, very valuable discussion. I don't know if anybody wants to put their hand up and say anything. Have you got any questions, guys? This is your opportunity now.
I'm saving this chat, man. These comments are golden.
I'll be sending the chat out with the whole video, link to the video as well, so that you guys can, if there's anything that you want to read again or something like that. No questions? No.
Just to say thank you. That was really, really good. Lots of insights to take away. It's really funny how we forget, because life gets busy and we just go back to our default modes, but it's essential to keep in touch to stay fresh.
It is. It's very, very important to sometimes just have an assessment of your own relationship and ask yourself honest questions about how are you showing up, like Oliver says. How are you showing up in your relationship, and are you showing up in the best way you possibly can? And if you're not, it's also about not being too judgmental about yourself, and looking at yourself with love and kindness, and from the approach of, okay, let's make some changes. I'm willing to make changes to make something better for myself and to make myself better for people out there. Because when you do that without, putting yourself down and making yourself feel like a failure, that's when beautiful things start happening in your relationships.
Yeah.
I really appreciate everybody that showed up. It's been fantastic seeing all your faces, and I've been watching the responses. Nobody looked bored, which was great. It would be lovely to get your feedback. So what I would like to ask you all to do is, I think you all found it on LinkedIn, is to please let us know what you thought. Whether it's just resharing the post, you're welcome to, everybody. I'm going to take a photo now if everybody's happy with that. And you can just maybe comment on that. So let me just get my camera out and I'll take a nice photo. Everybody can look very happy and okay, ready and smile. There you go. Thank you. I'll put that up, and yes, it'd be lovely to hear your feedback there. And have a lovely day and enjoy growing your relationships, guys.
Thank you guys for being here and for the comments. Such fantastic comments. I'm saving this so that I can reference these. But thank you so much to all of you who were here as a part of this and just, it's a journey, right? It's a journey. So if you think about going on a journey and you think of your relationship as a journey, enjoy the journey. If you're going on a nice car ride through the countryside, you know what I'm saying? You're not worried about whether, the car is going to break. Well, hopefully you're not worried about whether the car is going to break down and, and all of these crazy negative things. You're like, oh, look at the beautiful scenery. Look at the road, put the windows down and let the air, go through your head. Like, it's a journey. And our perspective is really, really paramount to how well we navigate this journey. So enjoy the journey.
Thank you, Oliver. And we will be doing another discussion pretty soon. So keep your eyes open and hopefully we'll see you back then. And please tell people about it if you think it was valuable. Thanks so much, guys, and see you next time.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
You can just stay on a second, Oliver, and we can have a chat.
Sure.
Thank you. That was brilliant. I really enjoyed that. Thank you, Oliver.
No problem. Thank you. It was a pleasure. I enjoyed it.
We're still on live on Facebook. So if you would like to tell people where they can get hold of you now, that would be great.
Sure, absolutely. So if you're a social media person, Denali LLC, DEN, literally the first three letters of my wife's name, which is Denise, and the first three letters of my name, which is Oliver. So DENOLI LLC is all social media everywhere. YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook. I'm not really that active on Twitter, but if you're on Twitter, I'm there. TikTok, Pinterest, you name it, we're there. So you can follow us there, or you can look up my name. You see my name here. Excuse me, Oliver Marcelle. You can follow my personal accounts as well. I do put a lot of content on there as well. So that's the best place to find me. When you look me up there, there'll be links to other things that you can go to and peruse and find out about more about what I'm doing and what my wife and I are doing.
Thank you, Oliver. And for those of you that don't know me, you can find me, Tracy Kimberg, anyway on social media as well. I'm just not on TikTok. And we look forward to seeing you at the next discussion. What's the subject, Oliver? Can you remember?
The next one, I don't have it up in front of me, but I think we're talking about some man stuff the next time, aren't we?
Yes, something about men. Yes.
We're talking about some men's development issues. So it'll be a great conversation.
Will be.
I think some of my story will come out in that one in terms of going from underproducing to overcoming. So that'll be interesting.
Fantastic. Well, we'll call that underproducing to overcoming. There you go. That's the topic.
There we go.
Thanks, Oliver. Have a lovely rest of your day. I'm going to stop the live. Just hold on. Oh God, this chest. It's over. The live stopped. Thank you very much. I'm very, very grateful for you